Good evening, everybody. It is the Old Wolf with you live again for another episode of the Witch and the Wolf Wisdom Podcast. Tonight's episode, poetry from the Assassin Queen. Yes, my sister Diana is going to come on tonight and do something that we have not done here yet, but I'm incredibly excited about it. I hope it sets the stage for more to come, no pun intended. So yes, we're gonna preview some new music dynamics. Diana's gonna come out, some poetry that she's written. She's also gonna talk a little bit about some of the aspects that you can say inspired her, influenced her in her writing.
I think she really wants to talk about authenticity.
Yes, listen, the dynamics of what drives us, you know, in any aspect is unique, and I'm a huge fan of that dynamic. You know, I'm a story vampire. Like, I will seek you out in the middle of the night and suck the story out of you because I love stories. I love the dynamics of other people's perspectives. I think it is pure magic. It gives us so many different tools. It gives us insight. It gives us hope. Sometimes it scares the shit out of us, but hey, you know, that kind of goes with the territory. But yeah, so gonna have a lot of fun tonight with that. She'll be on a little bit later. As always, again, the views, expressions, thoughts, etc., expressed are mine and mine alone. If you choose to share them, please feel free. But all the disclaimer. Further disclaimer. Yes, there's some language that I use, and some of the topics that we talk about can be adult-oriented. It can trigger. It's not my intent. But again, with full disclosure, I believe in honest dialogue. It does nobody any good to sit around and blow smoke up each other's asses unless it's that kind of fucking party, which it's not. So if you want to have that kind of party, you're welcome to, but yeah, that's not what we do here. We support a lot of people. A lot of people support us. Again, you can see a lot of that through Shiya's website, ladyshia.com. Also through her lives that she does, and
the mentorship circle.
Her mentorship circle, which, I mean, yes. Again, since you have mentioned it,
boom.
So we click one thing, and then we click another, and then all of a sudden,
there it is.
Yes, up on the screen.
Where I am dumping out all of my brain, basically.
Yeah, it's not just your brain you're dumping out there, baby.
Yeah, it's my book of shadows, it's my magic, it's, you know, and it's not just me, it's everybody supporting everybody else. And Moon, glad to see you, sweetheart.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
This is a place for all of us to get together, support each other. We are dumping out our traumas and helping each other through them. That's shadow work.
But listen, there's also a lot of laughing, a lot of joy, a lot of hope, inspiration.
And a group that you can, like, you know, how many people miss how, like, turning around and being able to pick up the phone and say, good morning, and have somebody answer you back. Good morning, how's your day going?
Listen to me again. We got
that shit going every day. It's great.
It is, as I like to say, it's organic. You know, it has many layers to it, and they adapt depending upon, you know, the people and the moment. I've seen conversations go real deep real quick, and then I've seen, you know, other dynamics where, you know, and again, as a guy, I got to tell you, it's pretty funny sometimes. Like, again, I almost feel like a fucking creeper sometimes. Like, I look at the chat, and then all you Gabby witches start, you know, talking about, like, women stuff. And me, you know, I'm smart enough to know my mother raised me correctly. I was a single parent, you know what I mean? I know no matter what I say, it's basically the same thing as me just showing up and pulling my dick out. So I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit here and observe. Well, listen, part of it's respect. Some of it is fear. You know, I'm not going to lie, because you never know when somebody's going to be triggered. And it's just like, okay, you know, and I know those dynamics. You know, people are what they are. It isn't fair to say, well, because I have this expectation, you must act this way. No, you know, again, especially when people are interacting in a safe space, sometimes not saying anything is the best thing, even if we have an opinion. You know what I mean?
Sometimes, yeah.
So, but I do, and you'll test, and Ashley Hart and a lot of the other people that are involved. I do jump in when the universe compels me. Like, I did a post today of somebody who had, made a reference to something. And to be really honest, I've seen how she interacts in the community, and she really is an incredible soul. I've seen her reach out to support and encourage and really just be good,
Yeah.
But the other side of the dynamic, and obviously, like a lot of us, she's been through some shit. She's been betrayed, you know what I mean? And she's obviously been thrown into the spin of the bullshit body image dynamic, aka if we don't look a particular way, somehow we're not attractive. It makes us not beautiful. We're not desirable.
I saw a meme the other day where it showed a, average body, maybe a little on the chunkier side, animation of somebody that was maybe a little chunkier than the one that you posted there. And I said, hey, before you slide into my DMs, understand this is what I look like. And it was a disparaging thing on somebody who has a body shape that I felt was fairly similar to mine. And I'm like, you know what? That's hot. That's sexy.
Listen, again, here is the simple truth. People who are going to run on the imaginary illusion shit, they're going to do what they're going to do. They're not unlike lemons. They're just going to go off the fucking cliff.
Yeah.
There is a shift in the dynamic. And I say this for all the ladies out there to give you hope. Not all of us men are driven by that dynamic. Despite all the conditioning, despite everything around us telling us that this is the way it's supposed to be, no, we don't all react that way. Some of us get it. I have found more passion, more sensuality within the dynamics of who a person is inside, aka the witch sitting next to me, okay, than in any of the plasticine Barbie bullshit. And I've been on both ends of the spectrum. So, again, I understand, not only from my own personal experiences, but being a single parent and raising a son, how much of this is fucking conditioning. All right? Absolutely. It's conditioning. It's bullshit.
Oh, yes.
Okay? It sets an unrealistic standard, and everybody, men and women, pay the price for it. So, my context was to put it in a response variable to say, hey, sister, your beauty is not superficial. It's internal, and to try, because it's a fine line for men. Sometimes
you guys turn around and say, hey, right, you're gorgeous without a woman taking,
you know what I mean? Because I don't want to, again, to, the woman that I love sitting next to me be going around trying to be the emotional support animal for every lonely woman out there. I can't fucking do it. All right? It's Russian roulette. Mm-hmm. But also in the same dynamic, as a human being, to be able to express empathy, to express support in a non-sexual dynamic, aka I'm not trying to fuck you, I'm just trying to say, hey, I get it, please don't feel this way. Not all of us are like it.
Yep.
So, and it's tough. It's a bit of a juggling act sometimes.
Ladies, there is hope out there. I mean, I've spent the last several days listening to discourses of the wolf around me and the wolf and the monkey and stuff like that, and hearing just how they've, really gone through different elements and come out the other side. And it's been one hell of a thing to listen to and realize that, man, there are some good, healthy men out there still. There really are. Yes, there are. So, a couple of things real quick that I just kind of want to get out of the way. First, real quick, March 3rd, coming up around the corner, Broken Past at the Stone Pony, Asbury Park, New Jersey. Yeah, that's this weekend. It's this weekend. Unfortunately, we're going to get walloped with a fucking snowstorm, so there's no way we can get the fuck down there. But hey, if you can, and if you're hearing this and you're going to be somewhere in the Asbury Park, New Jersey area, great place, iconic club. It's going to be a great fucking show. You know what I mean? It's going to be one of those dynamics. If you go, you say, hey, I was there. You saw, the first show by this. And I was joking around, with a buddy of mine. It is Broken Past version 5. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It really is.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Part of version 1, right?
Yeah, all right, part of version 1.
Version 1.
You know, we had Bagger, who was the first original singer. Then we had Rob Rockefeller, who sung with us for a show. He unfortunately went through some struggles with cancer, and, you know, he's recovering and, you know, back out there. But, you know, personal issues. And then we had Jim Beck, who sang with us for, you know, several years, started writing the originals.
Great
Jim,
guy.
myself, and my son, you know, we all kind of had to go our way. So Tony reformed the band, which was Broken Past, you know, version 4, which had Frank Acey on vocals. And Frank Acey has now left the band, and they have the new singer. So this is Broken Past, you know.
Past 5.0.
5.0.
5.0.
Better, stronger. Listen, the band has continued to evolve. I love all those guys. Tony's my brother.
Good music should be. And,
yes.
And,
it's how a band evolves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you're out there, March 3rd, the Asbury Park Stone Pony.
If you can't get out there, check out their website. I know that they're...
Yeah, a couple of people will be streaming the show.
There, so.
Show your love, you know, however, wherever you can. You check them out online, YouTube. You know what I mean? They're a good band. If you're into metal, they are a good band.
They are, absolutely.
But also back on the other thing coming up around the corner. Yeah, I'm going to be doing another round of workshops. This one a little bit more specific, a little bit more hands-on. It's going to, once a month, replace the Tuesday night podcast.
The many faces of narcissism.
Yeah, this is the dynamic that all the people that I encounter in any level of counseling or support element, or even just a generic, you know, what the fuck is going on conversations. Narcissism, weaponized empathy is just the continuing, reoccurring theme. And it's difficult, especially for high-functioning empaths, to recognize a lot of these variables, let alone make sense and then take it and put it into a dynamic that actually applies in their fucking life. So, yes, workshops are back.
Yeah, and this one's going to be 3 different workshops, 3 weeks apart each. And you can go to oldwolfmusic.com/workshop, or just go to oldwolfmusic.com and click on the workshop link, either or. But you can sign up for all 3 of them, or each one individually. It's up to you. It's of course cheaper if you do all 3 of them together.
This is the dynamic that we do. This is something I'm going to do again. The proceeds from this obviously keep the other aspects like the podcast and a bunch of the other stuff, the alternative recovery site and dynamics of different things that we do, also in keeping the music, the meditation stuff out there for people for free. So this is the other side of the coin sometimes that we do. So yes.
It's going to be, the first one's identifying narcissism, second one's surviving narcissism, and the last one is going to be healing from narcissism. Oh, yes. It's going to be powerful,
and
guys.
There are many, many faces of narcissism. You know what I mean? This is not something like, you know, they all run around with a little fucking, you know, flashy little light on their head and you'd be like, oh, there's one. It's at so many different levels. And really, again, you know, Shiya and I talked about this. It's not even something that I can do realistically in one workshop, you know, and my expectation with this type of stuff, even if I only have a handful of people that participate, each one of these workshops will probably be 2+ hours long.
Normally is, yeah.
Well, because it regards to the specific dynamics of people. The trick to understanding this is looking at other people's experiences, their perceptions, and then seeing the correlations. It makes it easier, especially again for empaths, when they're looking at the dynamic from the outside, because from the inside, we're fucking emotionally compromised. We have all the different feelings that go along with it, and that many times convolutes it. So yes, those will be coming up, and again, they will be replacing once a month for, you know, a little bit for the podcast. Yeah, between now and April. So yes, indeed.
Actually, I think the last one's in May.
Yeah, I mean, again, you haven't exactly...
the dates are on the website.
Right.
So
you got to go to the website for the details. The witch handles all that shit. She's my manager.
Go to oldwolfmusic.com.
I'm the dancing wolf. That's what I do.
I put him to work. I'm going to throw him in the corner.
Well, not just that, also, too, composing, producing music, it's a time process, you know, and I have been on a pretty decent roll,
super inspired,
doing, you know, the meditation, Reiki, chakra music, and getting tracks together, not only for the new album, but also working on dynamics of music that happen in the moment, that become inspiration. We're going to preview one of those tracks that's actually, we'll call this Shiya's baby, because it really is. It's hers. Very similar to the dynamic, and my brother Jonathan, who just jumped on, Jay Phoenix, in how he and I created Time of the Phoenix. You know, it was born of a couple different elements, and then when combined, you know, created
Well, the honest
the
truth
magic.
is, you started coming up with some of this song dynamic, played it for me, and I got so emotional about it, I pretty much claimed it.
Well, it spoke to you, and,
Yeah,
and the dynamic
time.
is how it worked, especially with you and I being a couple. You know, some of them are the dynamics of things that, you know, you and I and Shiya and a couple of other people who were involved in the development of this next album. You know what I mean? And again, I have always made it a point to share the development. I think it's important, as with all things, understanding how a thing becomes gives us a lot of, you know, insight. It gives us also that kind of reinforcing hope, the belief that, yeah, you know, music doesn't start out right off the bat as a top 10 fucking hit, all, you know, beautiful and sounding great. That, you know, it starts off rough sometimes. There's a dynamic of growth and evolution, and I loved, you know, really, again, all those raw outtakes, all those, this is how the song was made, you know, especially like the Beatles as an example.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
You know,
the one that
listening to how they creatively did those albums, and especially, you know, towards the end when they had access to all this crazy equipment and stuff like that, the level of experimentation, but also, you know, how a song will evolve as different people interact with it. And that's one of the things that I have continued to do, is I bring other people into the mix. It isn't just me, the old wolf. It's myself, it's you, Suzanne Kuhn, you know, involved in Her Desperate
Mind. Yeah.
Jonathan involved in
Time of the Phoenix.
You know, Jeff Thal doing drums on Keep On Talking, Matt Brown, who's the vocals for a lot of the track, pretty much most of the goddamn tracks
and even
that I released.
Shout out to DJ Thompson for being
DJ, the influence for Just Like Me.
Yeah.
Tony Rodriguez did some bass work. My son did bass work and guitar work.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people. We performed live with Jim Beck and Greg Carr Schumann down at, you know, so we're constantly
Hey, come on.
trying to involve other people.
Absolutely.
As was what I started off the show, which is a rough track of one of the new songs coming out. Doesn't have a name yet. Doesn't really even have a structure. That's on Shiya and Shiya in their part of the process. So I just kind of, you know, I whip up some magic goo and I'm like, here, witches, go, take it. Create some evil with it.
We will grab it and go.
Yes,
We like magic goo and Eye of Newt, tongue of bat, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yes. All those stereotypical witch things.
Yes.
So yeah, that's how it happens. And we got a couple others that we're going to preview later on. And again, we're going to try something completely different. Depending upon how my sister Diana decides to play this, we're going to actually have some background music for her. She won't be able to hear it while she's doing this because of how this all works. But everyone else at home will hear this. So she'll have to make a choice when we put her on the spot live in that, does she want to have a more acoustic dynamic, or does she want to have the new, darker metal tune that's never been premiered, nobody's ever heard, and, you know, I'm just saying, that's really up to her. But
yeah, we'll be calling you in just a minute, Diana.
What we are going to preview first is, again, as I said, the dynamic of the song that is Shiya's. Okay?
Yes.
And again,
this is the one that as soon as I heard it, I'm like, oh, this speaks to me. It's mine.
She claimed it. Now, again, it has a name, But we agreed
We're not going to tell them what it's about.
we're not going to tell everybody what it's about. We got to keep some mystique and some curiosity. But this is a track that again is deep in production, yes. And Shiya will be singing it.
It spoke to me from my own experiences and from experiences of others.
So we're going to dip out real quick. We're going to preview Crisis of Confusion, which is a new track. And then when we come back, we will have
the Assassin
Queen on live.
Assassina.
So yes. So hang on and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so yeah, we're back. I got my sister Diana, aka the Assassin Queen, on the phone with us. We're gonna talk for a minute or two before we jump directly back into the other stuff. But that track, as I said, the Crisis of Confusion, is going to be literally a Shiya track with her doing the words, doing all the different things that go with it.
I claimed it. I got very emotional listening to that.
Yes, she made a point to be like, oh, it's mine. No one else can have it. So up on the screen, for those of you who are actually watching the video, this is my interpretation of the Assassin Queen. Now, she can't see this now, so she can bitch at me after when she watches the fucking podcast at a later date and time. And I promise you, it's nothing obscene. I just, again, it's kind of like that.
Oh, I approve.
Yeah, the kind of masked, stealthy chick in the night with the blade coming to kill your ass. You know what I mean?
Like a badass.
So don't worry, I didn't frame you in a sexual light or anything like that, but I did frame you in a horror, oh my God, I'm going to die kind of
No,
light.
I see it. I just have my computer.
Oh, so all right, you're gonna do this. She's like, all right, she's not gonna play fair. We told her not to look at the podcast. She's like, fuck that. Don't tell me what to do.
She's an Assassin Queen. You never know where she is and what.
Now you've seen the image, so if you want to go ahead and bitch about it live on air, I guess that's me. I set myself up for that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure really how to get around it, but anyway, yes, that is the Assassin Queen. Okay, and for those of you, who maybe just started following the podcast, my sister Diane has been kind of been part of the core of the dynamic that started a couple of years ago. So there are a few sisters within Shiya's, we'll call it her inner circle.
My inner circle.
Okay.
Yeah.
That have all adopted these names, these personalities, if you will. These masks that sometimes they come out at night and they wear to scare small children. I don't know. That's what I've heard. That's, how witches roll. But anyway, so we have the Beaver Queen, we have the Goblin Queen, and we have the Assassin Queen.
Assassina.
The Assassin. Yes. So yes, that's the quick background dynamic story. Okay. So
shall we tell those where that actually comes from?
If you want, then listen, that's your prerogative. Like I said, I was going to give you, the framework to basically roll with this however the fuck you wanted to.
we were leaving you all dark and mysterious and shit.
Right. If you want to blow your cover.
I can stay that way as well.
Listen, mystery is a good thing. Anonymity, too. It's kind of like you can be like the female Batgirl. Well, Batgirl is the female Batman.
No.
Yeah, I can't even get my words straight. I'm so conscious, like, don't use the wrong pronoun, Wolf. Like, fuck. But yes,
I do love the graphic though. Thank you.
It gives you that stealthy kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
samurai.
It might be interesting, but if you look too long, that's your ass. It's over. You know what I mean? So, and it's not a bad, image to have, especially, depending upon where you got to roll. You know what I mean? People tend to react differently when, there's fear involved.
Well, it has a Mortal Kombat aesthetic to it. I love it.
Fatality.
Fatality.
So I'm going to throw this image up here because you specifically asked that we use it. So this is going to be the background image for those of you at home who can see.
Now, do you want to tell us where this graphic comes from, Diana?
So I'm part of a Facebook group, and like you, both of you, I lost a spouse. Okay, and this artist, he's in that group, and so he has his own Instagram. His name is Doug Kalberg, and he's super talented. And he has amazing drawings. Like, it's very comic book aesthetic. He has great talent. And
it's really
so
nice work.
Yeah.
Very.
And so he read the poem. That's his interpretation. And I'm like, oh my God, he drew something for me. I mean, I'm
listen,
very happy.
It's a great representation. It's really nice because it conveys the dynamic of the multiple emotional elements in play, and that's really true for all of us, I think, is we can be many faces at any given moment in time, depending upon what the fuck is going on.
Yep.
Pretty much.
So you wanted the dark and metal, huh?
Yes. So this is what we're going to do. We've got the imagery. I'm going to set the background, as they say. So I'm basically you ready there, my sister, to take them on this little adventure of the Assassin Queen's poetry?
Why not?
All right.
Let's get to it.
So here we go. The background track, never before heard track. The focus is on her though, so it should be really interesting. But no coincidence, the name of this new track is called Dark Places. So without further ado, we're gonna promo them both together. New track. Poetry from the Assassin Queen. So, my sister, take it away.
Welcome to my dark poetry. This one is called The Evil Within Will Play Always. You think you are charming, and you think you are suave, but you have no idea who you are. You think you control, but I love to cajole, and then you fell deep into your hole. You have no idea what you've done. You thought you could use me. You thought you were smart. It's too late, for you lost your heart. I would taunt you, haunt you, flaunt you as you scream. I am your nightmare. I am your dark. I will find you wherever you are. I am your problems, I am your fears, and I will kill the things you hold dear. I am the reason, I am the cause. I am the worst thing there ever was. You won't feel peace. You won't be free from my hellish devilry. You deserve it from me. You are my pleasure. You are my fun. And I will play. I'll never be done. I am your hell. Can't you tell? You forgot the day you fell. You won't escape your mind forever and ever till the end of time. I will always hurt you, taunt you, haunt you, and flaunt you as you scream. That's your price. There's no Jesus for you. There's only me for you. You deserve it from me always.
Man, that's some deep shit. That is,
Now-
and the first thing when I read this was like, damn, that's powerful.
Yes. Question. Was I supposed to experience like an unpleasant tingling in my testicles during the emotional? Because, and again, all joking aside, when I first read it, I was immediately struck by how powerful. I mean, there is a real energy in there. You know, people can play with words, but there's certain dynamics, and especially, you know, given how you presented it, it's very obvious that, you know, there's some darker energy in there that has a very sharp focus. And I know somebody somewhere said, yeah, it shall kill.
It shall kill. So what was your inspiration for this, or do you care to share that with us, Diane?
Well, unfortunately, not very long ago, I was diagnosed with renal cancer. And unfortunately, going through a breakup or a really terrible time in my relationship, my son, he is autistic, nonverbal, was at the height of his entry into puberty, and I was living very far away from the rest of my family. So I didn't have a whole lot of help at that time. And, or rather, the help that I had, it was not, I mean, not as much as I, yes. So, I was not in the greatest of places. And of course, I was bedridden. I just walked out of surgery, and I hadn't known yet whether or not whether my cancer journey had finished. So, and of course, all the thoughts in my head, I actually wrote a lot during this time, and one's published in the Elephant Journal, and the other one is Very interesting. But this one in particular, really, I don't know why. This thing only took like 2 minutes for me to write because I couldn't sleep. I was in pain and I felt like I didn't have anybody. And of course, I felt like death was there.
So you were just finding a way to express all of these feelings of what death and fear and all of these things were doing to you.
But I think maybe it's called resilience. Maybe it's just, the fight or flight. Being a mom, being a widow, I don't get to feel bad. I just get to do.
But it still has to come out some way, and it looks like that was your process versus, keeping it and carrying it inside like, some, ancient evil that, is going to be born down the road. You cut it the fuck out and said, okay, here it is, and it's, all of its bloody grandeur, but it's raw, it's real. I mean, that's maybe a better description of when I first, read it, that, it was very, very real, very,
Yes.
Kind of, it's hard sometimes to convey dynamics of emotion, if you know what I mean. You can get a generic shot on it, some things are easier. It's easy to be sexy or lusty or stuff like that, but when you're getting into the deeper, more darker aspects, a lot of times it gets confused. You could be expressing this dynamic and then somebody says, oh, well, that's just being rageful. And it's like, no, you don't know what the fuck I've been through, you know what I mean? So it gets lost in translation sometimes. So that's why I was really, really happy that you wanted to come on and actually talk about it, because it's you. It's your experience. It's your message. It's your magic.
You've come a hell of a long way since then, haven't you?
Yeah. I'm actually... No, I look back and I look at the drawing and I read this now and it's like, damn.
We've all been there to one extent or another. We've all had those moments where those dark emotions are just coming over us like unending waves.
But also it's a reminder of we can be our very own worst enemy. So, and sometimes, and I think I wrote this to be the bad guy, like to direct this, venom onto this thing, and only because I felt that it was unfair.
It was kind of like that cathartic dance that Deadpool does when, he jumps into the fucking lion's den to, get himself all ripped up. You just took a little bit in more of an indirect route in just kind of ripping out of you emotionally and then putting it to paper, and a lot of artists do that. They do it in music, and, the other side dynamic, and we see this all the time, is when there is no outlet, it goes to really ugly, fucking horrible places. You know what I mean? Guys like, Chester and others, Robin Williams, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that, but the end of the road is a dark, unfriendly place. And you took a different route, again, use the analogy of being a mother, but some of that's also just self-preservation, as you said, tenacity, the will to fight forward.
Yeah, it's like I'm attacking this thing, the evil, or whatever. Or maybe
you're assassinating it.
Well, I'm assassinating the evil, whatever. Or maybe, it's almost like, I'll be more evil. I'll be eviler. Whatever, whatever.
A good assassin has to hone her craft. Again, if your business is failing and business is good.
It's also culture. I come from South America, Catholic. I'm a child of an immigrant. I'm a first generation American. So both my parents came here from their country. And there's a distinct difference how you grew up. Like I grew up surrounded by other immigrants. And it's different than growing up in the regular white or, American neighborhoods.
Call it what it is.
Call it what
It's
it is.
different
Yeah,
than living in, the whitewashed America that
Yeah.
everybody likes to dance around and be like, hey, remember the good old times when, black people were slaves and women couldn't vote and, men could just rape children whenever they wanted. It's just like, yeah, no, I don't want that.
No.
You know what I mean? I'm just like, no.
But those weren't good old days for me, okay?
No, but you were taught to defend yourself. And,
True. Right, absolutely.
And of course, men were men,
Well, we have a similar dynamic. We were raised within the Catholic Church, and I imagine for you, from where you grew up, you had more of the true Latin dynamics of the Catholic Church like I did. You don't see that as much in the United States because it's been kind of, culturized. It's been adapted. But when you get out of the box here and you go to places like Portugal, or you go to Italy, or you go to Brazil or Colombia or Venezuela or a whole lot of other places, they still carry more of that old world Catholicism, which is it's real deep in male misogyny. You know what I mean? It is a male dominated aspect.
Male misogyny and guilt.
Well, a lot of guilt.
A lot of guilt.
Well, you know what's funny? It's not like I felt guilty. It's more like there was a distinct difference between immigrant dads and American dads. Like immigrant dads had the cross, the bigger the cross, the better, with the thick chains. They definitely wore jewelry. They definitely wore their shirts open, and the hairier the chest, the better. And,
oh, Jesus. It sounds like you were hanging like with my mother's family in fucking Brooklyn.
Well, and something, everyone spoke a different language. So I grew up next to Indians and Chinese and Russians, and it's funny because all you had to do is listen to the voice, and that's you, like if it's not in English. Okay, who's mom? Yeah, it's you. You got to go in. And it was usually followed by other moms and dads screaming for their offspring for whatever reason there is, may it be dinner, get over here, and then the doom, oh shit.
I mean, would you say it lent itself to a little bit better family dynamic, even if it was an extended dynamic?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to interpret your question. What do you mean?
Well, again, to use the concept analogy, when you have a lot of people of diverse cultural and obviously logistical within language and stuff like that, and especially, within the structure of how immigration worked within this country, there tends to be a stronger bond within the community simply for, again, survival dynamics. Yes. You know what I mean? So people, people will watch each other's kids more. Yes. Dynamics of things like food will be shared more. It isn't as isolated. Like, you go to fucking Beverly Hills and, Buffy's like, oh, they're breathing our air. You know what I mean? Where you go downtown LA and, people are living in fucking tents, and they're sharing a bowl of soup between 12 people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because the mentality is different in that versus when you come outside of it.
Yeah, in the neighborhood I grew up in, well, after we got kind of moved into the upper neighborhood, nobody talked to anybody. I was lucky to have a next-door neighbor friend. So, yeah, do you find that you have more family than that in that dynamic where you were at, Diana?
Well, so it began with just us. Slowly but surely, family did move to the States, but I still live next door to other immigrants. So
and they together.
They were community? Yeah. So like I grew up in a block, okay, and we weren't allowed to leave the block. Everybody played outside, climbed the trees. You knew everybody in that block. Everybody knew you, and you definitely didn't disobey a parent. Like back in the day when...
Well, that was back in the day when kids could still get their ass beat.
Yeah.
I remember those fucking days, yeah.
Yeah, like you know, and then you got 2 beatings. You know, like you disappointed. What'd you do? You embarrassed me. You know, like and you weren't. You know, Child Protective Services. You know, wasn't called. It was called discipline, and you know, within reason, clearly. You know, but
yeah, I mean, there's a fine line between disciplining a child for doing something stupid or wrong, or obvious child abuse because like again in my context analogy. My father was a drunken asshole. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with any other dynamic besides, he was a fucking alcoholic and he had no framework of what the fuck he was doing. You know what I mean? So you can compare certain aspects regardless culturally. Alcoholics are alcoholics no matter where you go. Junkies are junkies no matter where the fuck you go. And extremists tend to be within that framework regardless if they're on one end of this religious spectrum or that end. I'm curious, though, in the aspect with the Jesus dynamic. That was your one point in the poem, and it's a heavy twist, because especially within the church, and especially within Roman Catholic dogma, what you basically did was just, said, fuck you to the church. You know what I mean? Like, witches were burned for less than that dynamic. You know what I mean? What influenced you in tying that in the poem?
You're taught to be forgiving, but if you're harmed, it's like, okay, and see, this is the other thing. This was almost taught. You or rather, you were exposed to this frame of thinking, very patriarchal, I will hurt you more type dynamic, and you almost looked up to that. Like, or rather you admired that because that was a sense of protection. And of course, we can get into different conversations of like why we understand, like for example, I grew up in Queens, okay, and if I ever went to Brighton Beach, it wasn't that I couldn't relate. I actually could relate.
Well, you totally get the dynamic what I'm talking about, like what happened in Brooklyn. That's my mother's family, my cousins and stuff like that. Aspects of that cultural dynamic, especially in the time period, late 60s going into the early 70s, a lot of things changed. You had different types of immigrants. Russians and the Armenians came in. The Italians started moving over here. Some of them started going out to Staten Island. So you had complete shifts of dynamics, but you still had those crossover interactions. You know what I mean? Depending upon, like I do, you cross from one block to another, you're in a whole nother fucking world. Literally in a whole nother fucking world.
However, though, if you spoke a different tongue, and I did, okay, I grew up with family that spoke, my first language was the language of my family, and then I learned English at school. So if you spoke a different tongue, it was almost okay, because, and you almost could relate to the foreign tongue than you could to the American, because they're like you. And it was immediate that, like, you would walk around the neighborhood. So in other words, maybe the kid that grew up in, say, I don't know, Levittown, okay? Or somewhere else that was not quite like my neighborhood.
Not part of the 5 boroughs, say, yeah.
Yeah, like it's like, let's say somebody from the suburbs and maybe somebody a little more well-off, and say somebody who, and not to say that everyone well-off doesn't speak another language. That's not true either. But I'm saying if you grew up in the States and didn't have as much of an exposure to the other cultures or where your family's from, you're going to feel a little less welcome or a little more afraid, or when you go to a neighborhood where everybody speaks not English.
Well,
but
you're relating exactly to where I was going to go to, because from my side of the block, as they say, because of the dynamics of how my grandfather was and their perceptions, you and your family basically were the devils that were coming in and changing the country and, bringing communism and socialism and foreign language and dynamics. And I remember as a kid, the incredible dynamics of, hatred, racism, anger, and violence within some of those communities through the 70s into the early 80s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic, same place, same time, but depending upon, again, what side of the street you're looking at it from, it had a completely different spin on it. Now, granted, I was lucky. My mother was a hippie. She was a gypsy, so she didn't buy into my father's side of the family's kind of, white fucking nationalism, pseudo fucking Nazis in disguise kind of shit. You know what I mean? But it did create a conflict between two opposing dynamics. My mother was down, doing, demonstration marches and stuff like that in, Washington Square Park or New Brunswick, New Jersey, within the tri-state area during the 60s when I was born and stuff like that. Whereas my father's family, my grandfather, was actively preaching, we got to chase them all the fuck out. You know what I mean? So I was caught literally between both ends of the fucking spectrum.
But something? You can establish, you could establish different identities as you're growing up, as you're progressing. Okay, because eventually I moved out and I went to a, more suburban area. And then, of course, you had to behave like,
right? Yeah,
you adapt. But, and we can get into different conversations. But at the end of the day, the thought of I am equal to evil isn't foreign to anybody else who can relate, who are probably speaking a different tongue than you.
Well, good.
I'm going to like my frame of where that thinking comes from is very much the same as like an Italian, as like a Greek, as like a Russian, as a Polish.
It is the narrative of being on the outside looking in.
Well, yeah, but like you understand what is going to happen. Like, so if anything, you relate more, whether you want to or not, but in the end, you almost feel safer. Like some people felt safer going to those neighborhoods because they're the same.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, again, it's a simple dialogue a lot of times, especially when you frame it against some of the shit that was happening on the other end of the spectrum. So yeah, when you have elements, and you and I both know, any part of Queens or Brooklyn or the Bronx at any given point in day and time, wrong place, wrong time, and, shit goes sideways, for everybody, you know what I mean? And it wasn't just an isolated, hey, it was only happening, to the Italians over here or the Haitians or, people who lived in Spanish Harlem or whatever the narrative was. There was always those dynamics of conflicts, the haves, the have-nots, this person, that person, so but
then there were the more eclectic neighborhoods. Like, I feel like I was lucky. No. But I feel like I was lucky in that I didn't live in an all Hispanic neighborhood or an all this neighborhood. I don't feel like I grew up in that type of neighborhood. I think I grew up, it was predominantly Jewish, but then suddenly there were more of other things.
Right.
And so you had like the knishes, you had like the different types of foods and restaurants, you had the pizzeria, you knew where to get certain things, but again, it was more harmonious than, like, it was almost a given.
Well,
personally,
if you lived in certain neighborhoods, certain neighborhoods were, and again, this was true in Italian communities as well, too, up until a point, the neighborhoods took care of themselves. It was a running joke within some of the Italian neighborhoods and stuff, that if you fucked with the bent noses, that was your ass. You didn't have to worry about the cops. They were just going to, put you in a fucking swamp somewhere type of thing.
Like,
And that
you would
kept
wish
people
they
in
were the
line.
cops.
Right.
Like, you would wish, you would beg for the cops.
You know what I mean?
before
And that dynamic happened in all of the communities to different degrees. Now, granted, none of it is ever perfect. And obviously, you can make a case about the dynamics of organized crime versus that or the other thing. But we know in retrospect that, the police departments, were just as fucked up in many ways, and the guys and the women that were good, were understaffed, underpaid. So, what do you expect when you have all those dynamics to happen? We pretend, we say, oh, we're cleaning up crime, but, we don't talk about all the other dynamics that go on every day. So now I understand you have some other poems, so would you like to cue one of them up?
Well, okay.
I mean, I don't want to throw you, under the bus.
No. I'm just going to end it with, I will bury you. You know what I mean? like I will bury my enemy. Like that's sort of where that comes from. Like that dark foreboding, and only because I grew up with that.
It's very Klingon. I can relate to it.
And that's why she's the assassin queen, is because she's going to be darker than the darkness. It's that old meme of, don't fear the storm, I am the storm.
Yeah, please,
listen,
right?
And sometimes it's a better take. A old friend of mine for many, many years, a guy named Mark, we used to do gaming way back in the early days when gaming was new. And as a single parent, it was one of the things I could do for the boys to interact with them. So we used to interact within the Star Trek community, and everybody wanted to be a Starfleet officer. Everybody wanted to be the hero. Everybody wanted to be Kirk and fuck women, or Spock and, solve science. Very few people wanted to ever play the bad guy. So we were just like, you know what? We're going to be Klingons because we like this dynamic of honor through force. We don't want to play all these, bullshit, type of let's dance around it. So we started a group of Klingons and just basically terrorized the internet for several years. But in a good way. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, we were looking to be trolls, but it's just like, okay, if you want to come out and play fucked up games, you win fucked up prizes. And, the kids really enjoyed it. It gave them, I think, a better dynamic of understanding that, sometimes you have to be strong. Sometimes you have to stand against certain dynamics of things. We can't hide behind fear. You know what I mean? We don't want to be the bad guy per se, but, dark and light, many times they dance between each other. Chai talks about, you're not casting a shadow, you're not standing in the light.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So what else you got for us? What do you got in there?
So, to continue the darkness, when one explores their gifts and you start getting to, like, I think a lot of my gifts may have rose up when my husband passed. Like, I guess I didn't realize how strong I was. And then suddenly an event will just catapult your things.
The trigger, yeah.
So Francis can make it stronger.
So you explore different frames of thinking and different beliefs. So, like, here's a poem and take a gander, take 3 guesses as to what I'm talking about. Okay, so here it goes. Hello, figurine. There you lie still and used. You lie there still, limbs abused. Will you burn, turn, possibly yearn? For what? Stop? Are you kidding? It's so much fun to damage you. It's all I can think about. It's the effect I must give to you, to your representation, just to see how much you ache. Because you win. You're free. I am not. So, your toy I make mine. Hello, figurine. There you lie still and used. You lie there still, limbs abused. Will you burn, turn, possibly yearn? Please. I feel nothing but free. Your maker is not. Because your maker chooses hate. Me, I choose peace. That's why.
Damn.
Wow.
3 guesses as to where that came from. What I'm talking about.
Well, Shiya, you want to go first?
I am going to take a hard pass because I really don't want to get this one wrong.
No, just get it wrong.
No, I'm gonna take that hard pass because this is one of those things where it's like to me what it really framed out. Poetry is a very personal expression, and rather than guess where it came from, I'm going to tell you what it brought up in me. How's that? It brought up in me expectations. You know, the expectations everybody has on you and tries to put you into these molds and masks. And that's what spoke to me, but that's because of my personal past.
See me, I got a little bit different take. I got a completely different fucking take. I got an imagery literally of a crucifix sitting over an altar, just gathering dust and, just kind of like this fucked up reminder of that disconnect between, religious symbolism and actual faith and connection, spirituality, if you will.
Yeah. I can see that too.
Well, so, exploring witchery and things like that. Shall I tell you?
Please.
Please. Again, the symbology obviously is reflective of that internal dynamic.
Yes.
And that's the beautiful thing about, music and art and all of this is that it is subjective to certain degrees. Even if the artist imbues it with every aspect that they can to say, this is my intent, people are still, when they interact, they're still going to walk away with their own take, no matter what you do.
Yeah, like the figurine for you was the crucifix. The figurine for me, I was seeing a little ballerina in one of those music boxes that was just getting...
Let's see what dark horror the figurine represents to Diana. All right, so here we go. Here it is.
Actually, it's a voodoo doll.
It's a voodoo doll. I was thinking that. I just wasn't sure. I was like, nah, she couldn't be that direct with it. I was like, there's something hiding behind the shadows. So I went looking for The Exorcist. I was looking for Max von Sydow hiding in the shadows.
No, it's the act of like somebody creating a representation of you. So another 5-second poem. I'm at a Botanica. Okay. I'm at a Botanica in, somewhere where I lived, and I'm listening to people talk about whatever harm somebody made to them, and rather than to protect themselves, they choose to buy a doll.
Now, for those who don't know, would you care to explain the Botanica? I can explain it my way, but you can explain it your way too.
Well, basically, it's where one can it's where you can buy candles, herbs, and it's supposed to be, multi-faith and multi-belief. And you can find your tools for spell work or, whatever. So for example,
Botanicas are a lot of where a lot of our modern witch shops initially came from. The Botanicas were very prevalent mostly in the Latin community, as far as I've seen. But you can have all kinds of shit. So whether you're Christian, Santeria, Voodoo, whatever, you can go in there and probably find stuff to use, right?
Well, and what's funny is like not everybody's looking to do harm in a place like that, right. And the thing is, if anything, most people are trying to not do harm or protect themselves from harm because the reality is you're not, you hold on to faith because faith is supposed to protect you from harm, let's say, okay? Or faith is supposed to teach you that harm to none, as it is, it shall not be done, it's not part of the thinking that you should have or whatever, but then there's that, there's the other side to, the against Christianity aspect. Okay. I can only forgive so much. I'm going to back to the other poem, be more evil than,
Yep.
so some people will do things like that, but then some people, that's the first thing they do.
Well, I mean, what you're describing,
then,
like, I know a lot of people refer to it as the gray path when, people talk about gray witches who will dance both ends of the spectrum but won't embrace the chaotic dynamic. They won't, as you said, just go on a fucking murder hobo spree for no apparent reason, dynamic, but also aren't afraid of just being like, well, hey, if you fuck with me,
do
that's
no
your
harm,
ass.
but take no shit.
There you go.
well, I mean, at the end of the day, say you fall victim to someone's malintent. Why won't it affect you?
Well, I mean, again,
Because,
it's cause and effect.
I mean?
Yeah, it's cause and effect.
Yeah. I mean, if it's, well, yeah, if it's not, if that's, I mean, somebody, creating a voodoo doll because the wolf stepped on my foot, and I'm going to make him pay, so like, and it's like, I mean, I could,
but you and I
rip you
also
apart or something, and you're like, and nothing, what?
But some of this is just a representation of symbolism that has just been co-opted to certain degrees, like the voodoo doll aspect. You and I, Shiya knows, and a lot of us know that, yes, that is a real thing, but it's also representative of the difference between not only intelligence, but as you said, the faith-belief dynamic. You can take any type of ritual element. You could take salt, shit, blood. It really doesn't matter in the end, except in the framework of what it represents to the individual. So you can use salt to heal, but you could also use salt to hurt.
Yep.
To torture. You see where I'm going? So, the dynamics sometimes themselves are just representative of our intent, what our manifestation, you know what I mean? Ultimately, where we are coming from. And, sometimes it'll have shades of light and dark, depending upon what's in play.
All I ask is that if somebody makes a voodoo doll of me, please give it some nice aromatherapy and a massage. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like the arthritis in my knuckles. Like, if you want it, you can just take my fingers. That's fine. I will trade it off. But here's the thing: when Shiya puts me in her doll, it's just literally like, there's nothing. Like, it's just like, being in this void.
Well, that's different. I'm actually walking you away from reality.
Oh, well, thank you.
No.
See, she publicly admitted it, so yes,
shit.
now I have the proof.
Well, it's funny because I remember that in the Botanica, sometimes you get a reader. And of course, me just being curious, I might have bought myself a candle. Okay, I might have bought myself. I'm a huge believer in Archangel Michael. So, of course, I'm going to buy an Archangel Michael candle.
Nice
because I like him that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever candle. I always lean towards the angels. That's just me. Whatever.
Well, those are the faces that represent for you. That's your personal dynamic.
Yeah. And so, therefore, I can't help but be nosy sometimes, only because it's there. Like, if there's a pink elephant, I know I'm not supposed to talk about it, look at it, but I can't help it. It's right there. It's pink. It's an elephant. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So,
oh my God, it just took a huge shit.
Yeah, exactly. Look at the pink. Yeah, and then you can't not pay attention. So there I am listening to this woman talk about doing harm to another and paying for it. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
she's like, okay, so I did something and now I can't sleep. Now I'm not feeling well. It's almost like it's payback.
Karma's a bitch.
Well, yeah. Like doing something harmful to a human, just, I mean, whether it be bad or whether they deserve it or not, okay, if the intent is, I'm just gonna, whatever,
I'm gonna fuck you up.
yeah.
Listen, ill intent is ill intent. Regardless of how you want to slice it with, this reason, that reason, it's still the same fucking thing in the end. You know what I mean? Without some framework of justification, AKA somebody breaks into your house and is choking your son, it's not the same dynamic if you cut their head off versus if you just walk into the supermarket and somebody gives you a bad look and you cut their head off. You see where I'm going? Context matters.
Yes.
In the dynamics of how something applies. Like, again, I don't subscribe to or endorse violence per se, but I've been around enough and I've experienced enough that if you confront me with violence, I will give you fucking violence back.
Well, again, I would be the storm.
Exactly.
Like if you really wanted the storm.
If you want to dance, then yes, we can dance. Now, again, context being what it is, I tend to react that way when the people around me are threatened. Classic empath dynamic, great at helping other people, not so great at helping myself. So I can take certain elements of things if you want to direct it to you. You can call me names, you can insult me, blah, 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 whatever. You start fucking with the people I love, and then all of a sudden I have a much lower threshold for just like, yeah, no. And I've had to work on that, and Shiya always comments, she's like, you did so well today out in public. You didn't give anybody the death look. I'm just so impressed by how controlled you are. I can just feel the rage in you. You just want, and I'm just like, please don't keep reminding me that I want to kill every motherfucker here in Walmart. I just really do. I'm just like, everybody needs to die.
I'm stifling that. Like, no, but you know what it is? Then, of course, I'm hearing, well, duh, you deserve it. And the girl's like, what do you mean you deserve me? And she's like, no, you did harm to somebody. That's your payback.
Yeah.
Listen,
I believe in blunt truth. Again, I said this in the beginning of the show, and I say this a lot. I am the king of fucking redundant, but nobody needs smoke blown up their ass. It serves no purpose. All it does is just further continues the problem more times than not.
Well, some people eject smoke from their ass.
Well,
they can't help it.
That's true too, but it's usually coming from their mouth. I believe in the South Park analogy. Most people, when they open their mouths, it's not words that are coming out they are literal ethereal shits. They're just, they have the same smell, the same texture, you know what I mean? And they just float around, you know what I mean? And then people walk into them and they get that shit on them and they take it and then they open their mouth and they pass the shit along to somebody else. I mean, unfortunately, if you look at it historically, all joking aside, most of the dynamics that we all struggle with have been passed down generationally. They've been conditioned dynamics that say, hey, it's okay to do this. I mean, it took us It took us how many thousands of years to finally get to the point that we're now just beginning to realize, and I say this for men, all right, this is exclusively men, so women, okay, you're completely off the hook on this one.
Shoot.
But for men, that we're just now beginning to understand the fact that it's just not okay to pull our dicks out wherever, whenever we want.
And
why did it take literally thousands upon thousands of years of fucking evolution just to figure that out?
Honey, I hate to break it to you.
I don't understand.
It is a minority of people who have figured, a minority of men.
Listen, there's a growing trend. You know, there are dynamics that are changing.
I hope that trend continues.
We wouldn't be seeing some of the other elements happening if there weren't men behind it. No offense to the ladies, but everybody, let's be honest about it. We need more men to get behind it, but
there's still a subsection of men.
The problem is men. So we're the ones that have to fucking fix it.
They can't just put their dick wherever they feel like it.
Yeah, well, that's their problem.
Yeah.
So you got some more poetry for us?
I do.
All right.
And by the way, I believe Kristen Matthew.
Yes, I see a Kristen Matthew. She says, hey guys, love that artwork.
Yes. And I was just replying. It's from my friend Doug.
Yes.
And he has amazing work. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, listen, it's a really impressive piece, and I think it definitely captures not only the dynamic of the poem, but in some ways, I think captures a dynamic of you.
The rage.
You know, I've interacted with you. I've seen you get antsy in some of the earlier workshops when I first started doing them and stuff, when you would tap into some emotional dynamics, and it was just like, oh, yeah, this woman's not fucking around. You know what I mean? She has a very distinct mindset, and that's good. You know, we need more of that. That's why I was really glad again to have you on this, because this is the only path forward in my humble opinion. If we don't communicate, if we don't learn,
like me.
but listen, you're the future. You know, how ironic, as the assassin queen.
Am I really the future, or have I always been here?
Well, you know,
that's
that's a debate that I'm not fucking touching, because again, my mother raised me better than that.
No, but you know what? No, I'm talking about the belief in self-preservation.
Oh, no
you
doubt.
know, like you know, so here's my last poem. I did not publish this because everybody around me at the time, and you know, you have only a very small amount of time to publish something political. Okay, so it's about politics.
Uh-oh.
So I wrote another 5-second poem. Okay, not even a 5-second. It's not even a poem. It's an article. Okay, so
hold on, before you do it, and I just out of curiosity, because I don't know if you want to make an impact on this, because remember, this does go into Starfleet's historical records. Okay, all these podcasts will be ejected when the planet dies into outer space for future civilizations and species and races and stuff to examine and analyze.
Or the aliens are listening to
with
it now.
that being said, is there anything, you know, again, that you would specifically, you know, want to frame this with? Like, again, would you like me to put,
no.
would you like the imperial mark behind it type of thing?
So I will explain that I wrote this after the incident of January 6th, like the night that it occurred. And just like how I felt at that moment as it was taking place, and then after it took place. And so, of course, no one encouraged me to publish this, because it, you know, at that time during the election, everybody was charged, you know, and I was living in Florida, and like you would see Trump supporters and Biden supporters, and you would drive, and these people were like ultra passionate and everything, but it became, and it was in the height of COVID, you know, almost COVID or whatever, you know.
Oh, it's fucking chaos.
And it was crazy, you know. Suddenly people are encouraged to get their license to kill, you know, like their concealed weapon license. Suddenly gun sales are going crazy.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Let's go to Wisconsin and get an AR-15 and jump out into the middle of a fucking protest, and all of a sudden a couple of people get shot, but hey, it's not my fault. I was there to help out. My name's Kyle, by the way. Oh, sorry, did I say that out loud? Go on, please. I'm sorry.
No, and then of course, you know, all the chaos and like, yeah, I'm only here because your store was getting robbed by them, and my AK, whatever the hell. So anyway, so it is titled "I Ate Ribs Instead," and just it's not for anyone. It's not meant to be for anyone, but it's meant to describe the apathy you feel because of this atrocity, right?
Yeah,
like
no, absolutely. Listen, I mean, again, everybody takes it the way that they do. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to say, hey, this is my intent, this is my perspective, this is my context for the dynamic. But I believe ultimately, I mean, again, true expression is just simply truth. You know, you're speaking from how you feel, what you see, you know, and I've tried very hard, and I think you've noticed it because we've talked a little bit about this, to try and say, hey, let's find some place in the middle, because it's fucking chaos on both ends of the spectrum. Nobody's got any exclusive rights. Granted, some of the deeper crazy shit seems to be coming from certain places where Nazis are running around like, somehow like they got a free pass and, get out of jail free card and shit. But I think that that's also starting to change. I think people are beginning to realize that they got sold some bullshit. I think everybody got sold some bullshit.
Well, and I don't have a problem discussing this because, again, I'm not for anyone. It was written in the hopes that ridiculousness would end. Okay.
Good choice of words.
So, of course, this was about January 6th. So this was written the evening of that, right after the siege. So it goes like this. Okay. I ate ribs instead. I was too busy eating ribs to give a shit anymore about Trump and his government siege on CNN. No more surprises for the Don. Instead of watching TV on January 6, 2021, we chose to keep eating ribs. You see, we are a group of friends who have little time to gather for ribs despite COVID and everything, including life itself. Some of us voted for Biden and some of us voted for Trump. We, my friends and I, visited our friend for ribs. Our very good friend is Polish and he cooks awesome food. We got very excited when his impromptu invitation to eat awesome baby back ribs made Detroit style with red Faygo in slow cooked barbecue, making his meat fall off its bone come up. You see, I can no longer be surprised at our country's propensity to continue its insanity. I wasn't there. I was very far away. I could do nothing about it. I was surrounded by family and friends who would aid in my immediate defense on that moment. The television was not turned on and we refused to turn it on. We did have our phones and had the Facebook and other news feeds to glance at periodically. I distinctly remember the group emphatically choosing to focus on the ribs that were inside the barbecue. I distinctly remember we saw the news feed alert us of the woman who was shot. We then saw the various shots of the Viking guy. Yeah, we just decided to call him that. And his ridiculousness standing on the podium where the Speaker of the House speaks from. We saw the selfies taken by the dude with the white beard and the hat. Yeah, I'm not giving much publicity to his name. I don't have to do that. Sitting on Nancy Pelosi's desk with his feet up. I have never seen anything like what had happened on January 6th. But January 6th came from the series of other amazing televised events with our election and the speeches and rants of Trump and the other folks talking about COVID and the lockdowns and the lies and deceit we still see on occasion regarding just about everything. I have become this kind of American. I have become indifferent to any more ridiculousness on this election. I most certainly can't wait for our next president to end the ridiculousness of things and perhaps remind the nation of what presidential decorum looks like again. It's time to pour the red Faygo on the ribs, said our friend. And he did just that, he being the Polish host who invited us over for dinner. Suddenly, all eyes went off the phones. I forgot where mine went. We just concentrated on the moment at hand. The fucking ribs. The bone that melts off the meat. And the fat just melts and the taste just sends us all to heaven. As I attacked the ribs, I remember hearing others around me bask in appreciation. Finally, the siege ended. The Don still looks like a total asshole and Biden will be president on January 20th. Not like I didn't get depressed or even slightly afraid for our country or anything, but mostly I felt utter shame. I felt utter shame for what I chose not to watch on TV on January 6th. I regret nothing about savoring the ribs that day. Today, as I look back on the footage of the siege, as well as the televised opinions of talk show hosts and other people alike, I can't tell you how thankful I am that I savored every moment of my time gathering with my friends and sharing an amazing meal and playing card games. Those ribs were damn good. And now that I complete this poem, but now I'm looking back and it's like, how different is reality from my hope of less ridiculous antics on TV? Because that's what goes.
But listen, this is the proverbial Frankenstein dynamic. It's a monster that has been created literally from our own worst dynamics, humanity, or at least Western culture here in the United States. But there's variations on it everywhere you go. But, long story short, the narrative has become that the fantasy is the reality. Reality is not convenient. Reality is not pretty. It isn't fun. So you see this reflected in a lot of dynamics. You made a very good point. One of the things that stood out to me, the apathy. We have, as a culture, become apathetic to it because we are just inundated with so much insanity, so much bullshit, so much horror, that there's no way, I think, for any rational human being to stay sane while just staying exposed to it. So by default, self-preservation says, well, I'm just going to ignore this shit because otherwise my brain's going to explode. I'm going to eat some fucking tasty ribs.
That sounded tasty.
But also, a lot of us, again, I try not to dance in terms of, this side or that side. I try and look at it from a comic. What is right? What makes sense? And some things you can make a case for on both ends of the spectrum. But like you, the dynamic of where we've ended up, the fucking Viking man just, tripping balls, in the fucking Capitol. You know what I mean? It's absolute insanity, especially when you consider the dynamic that for the past couple of years before that, the heavy-handedness every time a Black Lives Matter protest happened, every time a group of, lesbians or transgender people tried to, protest or do this, that, all of a sudden, every police department, every fucking SWAT team, National Guard, everybody's there to shut it down. You know what I mean? And that was the narrative. But somehow this dynamic, they all just managed, to come in there and do what they did. And it's, I've talked to people in other places in the world, and they were just blown away by what happened that day. They were just like, we could never have imagined that this would happen in your country. They knew shit was going crazy. Every time Don opened his mouth, it was just like, the stock market just, dropped and, people were just, running around, freaking out. And, a lot of it is also bluster to certain degrees. It's weaponized. But we also know now from the court dynamics that places like Fox News, Murdoch testified under oath that, yeah, we knew it was all bullshit. And we put it out there because these people are stupid and we wanted to take their money. They basically admitted it all. Do you know what I mean? That this entire section of our culture, of our society, is based off of lies and bullshit, specifically designed to take advantage of people and manipulate them to make money.
Well, what I see in just looking at the politics aside, just looking at the media level of it, is that you have what Diane's talking about is that overstimulation of the ridiculousness that is constantly coming at us from all sides of, let me just overstimulate you with all this crazy news, ups and downs, lefts and rights, and sometimes we need to take that break to have the goddamn ribs.
Those people that all went down there, for whatever reasons, believed what was going on, and they were fed.
Oh yeah, no,
they
I'm
were
not
fed
debating
bullshit.
that. I'm just simply saying.
And basically said, "Hey, your country's at stake. If you don't go down here, And granted, yeah, some of them are fucking Nazis, and some of them, but a lot of them were just average American people, like all of us, and they just were sold bullshit because they were watching Fox News and fucking guys like fucking Hannity and Tucker Carlson and all of them. They're all busted. Okay, literally, there's no way out of it because they have their fucking emails and texts. Their own words. They were literally freaking out between each other about how do we keep the bullshit going? The stock numbers are dropping. What do we do? Go out, lie. And that's what they did. They manipulated people, and as Diana rightfully says, it turned into an absolute fucking spectacle. And that's what they do. That's how they keep us all divided.
But I think the other point that she's bringing up in the poem, and correct me if I'm wrong, Diana, is that sometimes we have to unplug from all this bullshit and reconnect in our local communities. Reconnect with our friends.
Yeah, I mean, I was with friends. I was glad to be with friends, thank God, in that very moment. And it's like, we rarely have the time together to do that. And it was just so spur of the moment. Hey guys, I'm making ribs. And it's like, you stop what you're doing and you haul ass over there because this guy's an awesome fucking cook. And if he feels like making ribs, you're just gonna go eat. You know,
listen, I think it's a great. I think it's a great snapshot of the moment. You know what I mean? Because it's honest. You know, it shows a dynamic with, you know, again to certain degrees how we are desensitized and we're disconnected from certain elements. But it also shows, I think, and more importantly, that we have to focus on the elements that really matter. You know what I mean? Again, like you said, what are any of us really going to do, you know, short of turning this into like a bad sequel to Fight Club and burning the whole fucking thing down? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I haven't heard anything that makes any real dynamic of changing the element. People believe one thing over here. People believe this over here. And we're just going to constantly keep dancing between us until something changes the narrative.
So I was kiboshed with this, you know, I wanted to publish this and it was kiboshed because, like...
Oh, I mean, it's overtly political.
Don't consider publishing this. This is not going to be, because of course, if I didn't have a pseudonym, if I didn't have like a fake name or anything like that, this would have reflected bad. And then of course, unfortunately, that wasn't completely wrong at that very moment. It was so emotional,
but it's honest.
That it was very risky at the time.
Yes.
Yeah. So like today, yeah, you know what? I mean, and I wanted to segue, Wolf, if I may, because we did talk about this, about like writing authentically, writing for yourself in your truth and expressing how you really feel in spite of any opinion that may happen as a result. So for example, at that very time, I was recovering. Okay. I had just like gotten out of my cancer hell. So I wasn't exactly in like the most like limber, healthy moment. Okay. And like I was working and I was living in Florida and, you know, everything was way too overcharged. So it became kind of an atmosphere of like, we're not talking about politics. We won't talk about who you vote for. We won't bring it up because it just was too emotionally charged.
I mean, that's honest as well, too.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't. So in a way, like, not that I'm defending why I didn't do it, but in the sense, but looking back though, I'm not sorry I didn't. I'm kind of happier that I read it now. This is like the first time. This was the debut. But at the end of the day, I get to look back and say, is Biden ridiculous? Sometimes.
Listen, I think they're all
clips of him forgetting mid-sentence.
They're all ridiculous. Listen, our system is fucked.
Yep.
It is completely fucked. And it's controlled, like you said. it's in many
like
ways controlled by money.
the dementia sometimes kicks in or something. I mean, it happens.
Listen,
So,
I get it, and sometimes, he does the Jerry Ford thing and falls down some fucking stairs, or, he comes by and he just can't help himself, and the animal in him says, I'm sorry, I have to sniff you, and, there's 10,000 fucking reporters standing around just, click, 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 all of a sudden Joe Biden's a pedophile. I also see, again, I'm old enough to remember, Biden in the Senate and some of the other dynamics. So, he's a product of the system, just like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and a lot of these other characters, Don't
talk about Fight Club. I love it.
Yeah. And that, by the way, that's my mother, by the way. No joke.
Wolf's mom.
Yeah, that is legit. My mother, definitely, she must have realized that, fuckery was afoot. So. But I get that from her, too. But listen, no coincidence, she made it a point that, communication to the best of her ability was an open dialogue. Now, granted, it was difficult when we were younger because, again, my father was an alcoholic, abusive asshole who was really driven by his father's religious insanity. So there was this male structure within the family until my grandfather died. When my grandfather died, it was literally like fucking, poof, the whole fucking thing fell apart. And that was when my mother really began to segue us as the children away from those things. Ultimately she had to leave him and, fucking go off, to restart her dynamics, but the damage still, carries over. Now, again, it's actually ironic that just last night or the night before, my mother and I got into really deep exploration of the past, and I'm going to go public with this. Mom, since you're on here now, this is one of my opportunities as a child, as your son, that I get to get back, as they say. So, true story. So we're having conversations, we're talking about the past. And just out of the blue, my mother decides to ask me. She goes, you remember Lisa? You remember what her last name? One of the girls that was living with me for a little point in time back in the day. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I remember her. And she goes, did you know your father fucked her? And I'm like, no. And I was just like, wow, I haven't thought about this person literally for, probably 30 fucking years. But we were, again, in her defense, we were talking about the dynamics of the traumas and the example and the shitty things, that my father had done to us as a family over the years. And I was just like, no, I didn't know that. She's like, yeah, I walked in and caught them and stuff like that. Now, my perspective of the analogy, she was just, again, as my mother will testify, there was a point when I was younger that I just, I wasn't really serious about those dynamics. So there were different women that kind of floated in and out of my life. She was what was known at the time as a deadhead. So she was kind of one of those trippy hippie kind of girls who floated around. So, she was staying with me for a little bit. And then one day she disappeared. And I never knew why she disappeared. You know what I mean? She's just like, okay, and I didn't think anything of it because I wasn't in love with her. And I hate to say it, it wasn't really anything more than an experience for me. It's not that I didn't care about her, but I didn't care about her enough to really, look beyond it. And here comes my mother, 30 odd years later with, like a Scooby-Doo mystery, like, oh, here is the reason. Obviously, getting caught by my mother, fucking your boyfriend's father is probably enough reason for anybody to just slip out the back door, never to be seen again. Yeah, okay, so, yeah, Lisa, if you're hearing this, I forgive you. I feel bad for you. I guarantee you, you got the short end of the stick. So we'll leave that little story right there. Yes, Mom, thank you for that little dance into the past. Madness. Listen, I love my mother dearly. All joking aside, we have very deep conversations about dynamics of things, and she's always stressed the dynamic that honest communication is important, even if it's not pretty, even if it's uncomfortable. It's the only way we learn, and it's the only way we change things. Yes, and thank you for teaching him that, because he's awesome. Yeah, listen, it took a lot of years to, she'll be the first person to testify. My younger years, I was a fuck up, and definitely
never,
definitely a product of my environment. Granted, she planted the seeds that I was able to protect long enough to actually grow into something. But yeah, I had to learn from harsh experience, like a lot of people, and it is a human dynamic. Sometimes that's the only way we can learn.
I'm going to bring our sister Diana back into this because she was talking about writing authentically.
Yes.
And so I'm just going to take us full circle.
Take us full circle.
So yes, on writing authentically for yourself, that's kind of, I full circle with you too. Demons was born from that.
That's how I write, how I compose my music, yeah.
So, I mean, what did you want to express on that level, Diana? Because I know you said that was a really important moment.
I mean, you can't consider, so for example, I have written many an article regarding me and my life and, the rantings that I would go through in various situations. So there was one in particular that I wrote regarding raising my son. And, you have to, you have to set aside opinion. Because you have the right to express your opinion, and you also have the right to express it tactfully and carefully, because there are legal ramifications to names.
Yeah.
So I believe slander is when you speak, right? And libel is when you write it.
Yes, I'll use the analogy. One of my favorite analogies comes from Bill Maher, and he went through a several-year debacle with Captain Cheeto, basically, because he made the analogy that there's no proof that says that Donald Trump isn't the love child of a baboon. You know what I mean? And it's that kind, or an orangutan, whatever the orange variation. I think it's an orangutan. I may be fucking this up, but the analogy being, there's that fine line between satire and comedy and libel. You know what I mean? When you're coming out and you're making a knowingly false, derogatory or accusatory type of statement. It'd be like calling somebody a child molester and then publicizing that without any proof, without any documentation. But I get you, when you're publishing certain dynamics of things, I'll be honest with you, I have danced away from that end of the spectrum, not only within the podcast, but within, my writing and my music, because I absolutely abhor the dynamic of having to compromise certain elements. I understand where you're going, and it is
orangutan.
A reality in the world we live in, especially if you're going to publish that, they're going to put certain restrictions. They're going to create frameworks around it because...
No, but it becomes a challenge. It is. Challenge because you still want to express your thought.
Right.
You still want to express your opinion and explain the realities that you live through without having to pay the price. The only price you're going to pay is personal, let's say. Maybe your friend doesn't talk to you like, asshole, that you weren't supposed to write about it. But you did, look, I'm sorry, whatever, I know, but how could I not?
Yeah, no, listen, I've gotten caught in those situations. Like, there are a few people that I had associations with that, because I express particular dynamics of this or that are just like, we can't hang with you anymore. And vice versa, especially within the music dynamic, I've called a lot of guys out on shitty behavior, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And I've created, by my own hand, this element that, I'm not on that end of the spectrum. You know what I mean? I'm not going to endorse it.
But I'll tell you this, I don't regret my work because the ones that I have published, I don't regret them. You know why? Because they're real, they're true. And just because you don't, here's the thing. For you to feel negative is your defense against your own,
oh, yeah, absolutely. Perception's going to be what it's going to be regardless, right?
Yeah, if you're going to feel bad about what I said or what I wrote, you're kind of guilty. Now, one thing is, it's not necessarily guilt. It's also You have the right to defend how you feel, right? But I mean, and I see it all the time in like mindful websites or whatever, people now use, what is it called? They're like, if they're not publishing on, what's that other website called? I believe it's called.
Oh, I'll be honest with you. I have no idea.
WordPress.
Okay, yeah.
It's all over the place. Like
Or
WordPress.
blogs, when they're putting out blogs and stuff, yes.
Yeah. And
WordPress
so,
is
for
one of the
example,
blogs that are out there.
yeah. And so, for example, when you're expressing an event or a moment or ranting, you have to, take on the challenge of skillful telling of your story that doesn't remove the facts and doesn't specify, the people involved.
Yeah,
So,
I mean that's a definitive reality. I mean, again, I think like me, you use the element of context because sometimes we need to call certain things out, and let's be blunt, certain people out on dynamics, especially when we're talking within a framework of, okay, yeah, I'll use an analogy. I talk about Harvey Weinstein all the time. I think he's a fucking piece of shit, and he's now a convicted fucking rapist in a court of law. So as far as I'm concerned, that's open season. You know what I mean? And I'm going to hang him out there as the fat white guy poster child of, listen, young men, don't grow up to be Harvey, okay? Because this is where it ends, because he's a piece of shit. I use the same joke analogy with the Father Flanagan. I have an absolute disdain for child predators and child molesters. So if you end up on that end of the spectrum, you know what I mean? As far as I'm concerned, fuck you. You know what I mean? I come from the George Carlin school of it. I'm going to call your ass out on it. And if, like you said, if you don't like it, I don't give a fuck. Do something about it. That's, maybe that's arrogant to some degrees, but I think part of the problem, I understand people want to have a safe environment and, everybody wants to be respectful, but, bullshit is bullshit. If somebody comes out there spewing this hate rhetoric, talking about, killing Jews and black people and hail Hitler, they're a fucking Nazi. Call them a fucking Nazi. We fought a world war to end the dynamic of Nazis. Why are we tolerating them? Why are we pretending that somehow now they're acceptable? You know what I mean? No, you're a fucking Nazi. It's no different than a child molester. There's no place at the table for you. The end. No debate.
No, but
That's just me.
You know what else is interesting? It's like, just because, here's the thing. Don't not write it and don't not publish it. Just do it tactfully.
See, I give
then
you
no
credit where
one
credit's
can
due.
Then no one can say shit, and unfortunately, they're going to have to deal with the truth.
Yeah, I believe, again, dynamics of facts, but, I don't agree 100% that things can always be done tactfully. I think their very nature requires, the pure raw element.
I am talking, no, but I'm talking about publishing in, like, the internet, like you said.
Fair enough.
This is like out there forever, can't take it back type deal. Okay, just like a Facebook post. Oops, I shouldn't have posted. Oh crap! But you know what? You did.
But you know what?
And even though you deleted it, that doesn't mean you didn't.
Here is the crazy
like
dynamic.
that.
Here's the crazy, and I'll use this as an analogy and example. Okay. I've seen people exactly like you said get clipped for the most ridiculous shit. My buddy Mark got clipped on Facebook for posting a picture of Hunter Biden and the balloons. Okay, and really it was just Hunter Biden and the balloons, you know what I mean, about the Chinese balloon shit. And they clipped him for it. But every day, and I was talking to Shiya about this earlier, every day on the Facebook Reels, I see these reels of women just, dancing around in their underwear, bending over like, oh, are you pretending that you're not looking at the crack of my ass? This is not sexual, by the way. We're not violating, and it's just insanity as to what's acceptable in a moment versus what's not acceptable. I put this out on Facebook. I'm like, fuck, 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 all the time. And they don't fuck with me at all. I don't know why.
I saw somebody earlier literally give a close-up shot of their cleavage for about half a video, and then went out and said, "Hey, we're more than just boobs." And it's like, you're saying that, but then people just spent 15 seconds staring at yours.
I don't begrudge it. Don't get me wrong. You know, if people want to express themselves, that's fine.
I don't get it.
But if you're going to have a double standard and say, like you said, if you talk about this particular thing now, you know, all of a sudden you're censored or you're canceled. Again, I get it. It depends on the situation. You know, maybe, you know, again, I'm just, I guess, lucky in the dynamic that I've reached a point, you know, with the way I approach it. I would rather it be out there in its honest, pure form. And, you know, people are going to judge it. Like you said, they're going to judge it anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to, you know, they're going to do what they're going to do no matter how hard I try and say, hey, no, this is what my intent is. I mean, that's one of the problems, I think, with comedy a lot of times. So, like, you know, I talked about the Dave Chappelle thing with, like, you know, the trans stuff.
Well, here's the other cool thing. You know, you still get to tell your truth. And you still get to have it there. And if you don't like it, you don't have to read it.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm 100% with you on that. I guess it's a little bit different because you publish in a different format than what I do, really. So I don't have the same type of experience dynamic with that. What I do is I just throw it out in the wind. You know what I mean? Like, I'm old school pirate radio, kind of like, come get me if you can. You know, and I'm not ashamed of it either. I would rather, you know, again, be as authentic as I can be.
But here's the other thing. It kind of reminds people of, like, okay, so you know how we're in the age of gotcha? So, like, for example, you go to Walgreens and you're with, you know, let's say you're with your disabled child, and not Walgreens, you go to Walmart or something, and you with your disabled child and somebody's rude to you or whatever, and out comes your phone. And all of a sudden, they race away, or they stop, or they, you know, because now it's like, go ahead and be a dick. I'm going.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
that is the gotcha mentality.
And then all of a sudden, you know, the asshole's like, well, I mean, and they know they're doing something wrong, but then it's like, well, I should have the right to do whatever the fuck I want wrong. Why the hell do you have to tape it? Why can't you just, well, because it's fucking wrong. You know what I mean? If you didn't give a shit, if you didn't give a shit, then do it anyway. But then it's like, well, I don't want them to know it's me. I just want to do it. You know, like,
well, you know,
it's like, I might want to throw eggs at your house, Wolf, because you have gray hair. And I don't like gray hair. Whatever.
Wow.
You know, that's totally
I mean, we're getting really,
but I'm just saying,
really
like,
now.
No, I'm just saying.
Just saying. You're expressing how you really feel.
The analogy of, I just feel like throwing eggs at your house because you have a red shirt. Okay. And
actually, I don't think
I might want to throw eggs in your house and not get caught. But your freaking camera caught me doing it. Like, there's my car there, you know, or maybe my friend's car, and there I am throwing freaking pelting eggs all over your home. But I still want to throw eggs all over your home.
And that's fair. See, I would take the footage and I would use it to extort you and make you come over to my house and clean my toilet bowl and cook breakfast for me and my boys and shit like that, and probably rub, you know, Shiya's feet and stuff like that. See, that's how I would play.
Eggs, whatever.
Yeah, but I'd be cool with that. Listen, I'll let you throw the egg. All you got to do is just get on camera, so then I have the leverage then.
Look, all I'm saying is that if you're throwing eggs, you've got more money than you know what to do with the price of eggs these days.
Eggs are fucking ridiculous.
I'm throwing eggs versus throwing dog shit, let's say, you know?
Ooh,
that's
yeah.
free.
Oh, that's
you know what I mean?
A hell of a lot cheaper.
Dog shit
Exactly.
definitely makes more of an impact, more of an impression.
But
It's
but
cheaper.
then there's the crazy that's like, I'm gonna do it and I don't care if I get caught.
Oh, listen,
I
we
just
live
want
in a world that, you look at somebody wrong, they're freaking out, they're pulling out a gun and they're shooting you, screaming about, I felt threatened. So, yeah, nothing surprises me in that dynamic. And I've had a couple of people say, well, why are you hanging yourself out there? And this is the final question I want to ask you, because I think maybe this does explain it. You're in a little bit different situation, obviously, with being responsible for your son and having to deal with those dynamics where, my son is still part of my life, but he's a grown man now. So I have a lot of freedom now. When he was younger, I wouldn't do any of this shit because I just didn't want to take a chance any of that dynamic coming into play with the way our life was. Now that, I'm kind of a little bit beyond that, he's still my son, I still love him, but I don't feel as compelled to watch what I say or in how I put certain things forward. So maybe that's just, again, a luxury I have because, you're still having to deal with it by your very analogy. You go out with him someplace, you have to be cognitive of the other dynamics in play around you.
I mean, I guess, yes, to a degree, but then there are the parents that do what they do no matter right, wrong. I mean, because Wolf, okay, you're going to still have, all right.
You're preaching to the choir, sister. I can read your mind. I know where you're going, but please
like,
go.
I'm not sure if I should say, okay, let me be tactful.
Sure.
You're still going to have the parent, the single parent that's going to be more concerned with their own happiness in spite of whether their kids see it or
I lived it. My mother will tell you. She did the same dynamic. I didn't just raise my son. I raised half the fucking neighborhood that we lived in because most of the parents, to some degree or another, were completely fucking checked out. If they weren't, off on this fucking crazy tangent or that fucking tangent. And my mentality was I'd rather have them all around where I didn't have to worry about it. So I made sure that our home, at least, and I modeled it after what my mother did, was just basically an open house for children. All children are welcome. Children get fed. Everybody gets taken care of. It is a dynamic that required a lot more work, but ultimately I think paid off more. But I know exactly what you're saying. I lived that shit. I watched it. And I had to keep my fucking mouth shut because you can't say anything to another parent and being like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Because as soon as you do, then now all of a sudden I can't help the kid anymore because I'm the asshole. So I just kept my mouth shut and just did what I could do for the kids. So I get what you're saying.
Well, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, you just said that you feel freer now that your kids are older. Okay? Like you're less constrained to be who you are. And you can now do this in front of them because now they're mature enough. That being said, I'm not sure that I hide my personality from my son. If anything, he knows me like a book. And like when I wrote my article and like people would say, what if he read what you just wrote? I'm like, he doesn't have to read what I just wrote. I'm his mother. He lives in my house. Like there comes a point where it's like, your kids know you.
That's very true. That's very
whether
true.
you want them to or not, they
no doubt
you.
there.
And so you don't have to publish it. They already know this is who you are. What they shouldn't be is named. What they shouldn't be, like you could be, again, you're going to be careful about what you say and how you describe things, but that doesn't stop you from being you.
You know what? That's a fair point, and it is relevant to context. Every situation, depending upon that dynamic. But I do appreciate, and I like what you said to the degree, and ultimately it is a healthier dynamic that you are at least comfortable enough to express that and have that dynamic that you're not going to try and pretend to be something else with them. I think that's a damaging thing You and I both have seen that dynamic with parents that, you know, they think that somehow that's a better solution than just teaching our kids honesty.
Yeah, and like, for example, you know, I mean, going back to the right to be a dick, but then somebody whipped their phone out and I'm going to catch you doing it. And all of a sudden, you know what you're doing and you stop. Now, some people are like, holy shit, I almost got filmed doing this. And then there's like, I can't, you know, and it's almost like the other side that I have witnessed is, I'm going to be myself. You're a terrorist. Why am I a terrorist? I could be me. So be you. I can't be me. I'm going to what?
Yeah, I mean, what you just described is the mouth of fucking madness for all intents and purposes. Because my brain first says, we just need to get to the point where guys don't think that pulling their dick out is even an option. We shouldn't have to have a narrative.
You're caught. Somebody took a snapshot. I mean, if you're going to pull your dick out, then you clearly don't care if somebody takes a picture of it. You know, like, why? Why pull it out in public unless you are
I'm going to close out the show with this simple statement. I choose not to go down those rabbit holes. The last thing I want to encounter when I go to fucking Walmart is anybody pulling their fucking dick out.
Well, okay? Exactly.
I don't know where the fuck you're going to Walmart.
If someone took a picture of it, like, seriously?
Of all the insanity that I have dealt with in Walmart, I have never dealt with anybody pulling their dick out yet, thank God. I know now. See, Diana,
you know my
Diana
story
is like
about that, though.
Yeah, no, I don't. It's a podcast for another time. As the only man in the room in the moment, I refuse to allow this to become just one big dick joke.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's how it is. Hey, listen, you have other poetry, right, sis?
Actually, I mean, I do. It's published. Okay.
All right. Well, do me a favor. Promise me that you'll come back on sometime in the not too distant future with a couple other poems. I really enjoyed this. We can talk about whatever, you know. Again, the only thing that I asked is that, again, it doesn't end up one big dick joke.
No dick joke.
It's only going to be my only condition. Listen, I'm going to be the first one to admit I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable around dicks. Okay.
Big dick jokes. Can we
Superman's got kryptonite.
And that is okay. Well,
small dick jokes.
I mean, I'm not comfortable around vaginas. I have one.
You know what? That's okay. We can trade off. I'm very comfortable around vaginas, so.
Well, that's wonderful. Again, if you're going to pull your dick out, I might take a picture of you. Just don't get mad.
That's the thing. That will not happen in any version of the multiverse reality. There's no version of reality where the old wolf just pull, or the young wolf even. Even when I was young, I would not just pull my dick out. I'd go into the shadows where nobody could see, and then I'd pull my dick out where it was appropriate.
Only be dick out for one person. And that's it.
Well, no, I didn't play that way either. Listen, I was a young rock and roll kid. You know what I mean? I was hanging out with people 3 times my age when, you know, I was a fucking teenager. And I learned very quickly that, you know, long hair and guitar playing ability equals pussy. And that's what I was taught. That's what I fucking emulated. You know what I mean? And, you know, it didn't bode well for me. You know what I mean? It was many years of just dysfunction and heartbreak and loneliness and depression and suicide attempt. Yeah, you know, been there, done that. Don't ever want to go there again. But I had to go through it to learn it. So. I don't know how we ended.
We're just
he went off to the crazy place.
But yes, no.
Listen, definitely, sister, I definitely want to have you come back out on here again, read some more poetry, have some more. You're a natural. You should do your own podcast. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It'd be a good cathartic, you know, dynamic. You just get out there, do it like I do. You talk about whatever the fuck you want, however you want, and just, you know. So come back.
Yes. Thank you, Diana. Appreciate you coming.
Listen, everybody, again, the Assassin Queen, she will come back another day. She's always hiding in the shadow, so, I mean, don't kid yourselves if you think that she's not there. She is, okay? Just because she doesn't let you know she's there doesn't mean that she's not there. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean that you have to live in fear, but if you're fucking up and fear is what you deserve, tell them, sister, tell them how it goes. Tell them what happens. Leave them with that last taste of fear.
I will be your nightmare.
There it is. Listen, know that you're loved and love each other, and hopefully don't get on the dark side of...
Thank you very much.
Oh, listen, it was a pleasure. Thank you. Everybody, again, thank you for joining us. Until next time, peace out. I think we're going to close it out tonight just because, again, crisis or confusion or dark places. Sexy
I would
ladies.
like to hear Dark Places.
Dark places. We're going to close out with the metal track that we had on in the background. So I'm going to pump it out full blast for the rock that it is.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm gonna sign off so that I can actually.
Yeah, no, you get out of here.
Okay.
Go do, and we'll talk soon.
Good
Thanks
night.
again.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.